time since arriving in Africa, and I suffered a woeful sickness, and it was the forerunner of an attack of remittent fever, which lasted 4 days. This is the malignant type which has proved so fatal to so many African travellers on the Zambesi, the White Nile, the Congo, and the Niger. The head throbs, the pulses bound, the heart struggles painfully, while the sufferer's thoughts are in a strange world, such as only a sick man's fancy can create. This was the 4th attack of the fever since the day I met Livingstone. The excitement of the march, and the high hope which my mind constantly nourished, had kept my body almost invincible against an attack of fever while advancing towards Ujiji, but 2 weeks after the great event had transpired my energies were relaxed, my mind was perfectly tranquil, and I became a victim. Christmas came, and the doctor and I had resolved upon the blessed and time-honoured day being kept as we keep it in Anglo-Saxon lands, with a feast such as Ujiji could furnish us. The fever had quite gone from me the night before, and on Christmas morning, though exceedingly weak, I was up and dressed, and lecturing Ferajji, the cook, upon the importance of this day to white men, and endeavouring to instil into the mind of the sleek and pampered animal some cunning secrets of the culinary art. Fat, broad-tailed sheep, goats, zaga and pombe, eggs, fresh milk, plantains, singwa, fine cornflour, fish, onions, sweet potatoes, etc., were procured in the Ujiji market, and from good old Maoni Keri. But alas for my weakness! Ferajji spoiled the roast, and our custard was burned; the dinner was a failure. That the fat-brained rascal escaped a thrashing was due only to my inability to lift my hands for punishment, but my looks were dreadful and alarming, and capable of annihilating any one except Ferajji. The stupid, hard-headed cook only chuckled, and I believe he had the subsequent gratification of eating the pies, custards, and roast that his carelessness had spoiled for European palates. Sayd bin Majid, previous to his departure, had left orders that we should be permitted to use his canoe for our homeward trip, and Maoni Keri kindly lent his huge vessel for the same purpose. The expedition, now augmented by the doctor and his 5 servants, and their luggage, necessitated the employment of another canoe. We had our flocks of milch goats and provision of fat sheep for the jungle of Ukawende, the transit of which I was about to attempt. Good Halima, Livingstone's cook, had made ready a sackful of fine flour, such as she only could prepare in her fond devotion for her master. Hamoydah, her husband, had also freely given his assistance and attention to this important article of food. I purchased a donkey for the doctor, the only one available in Ujiji, lest the doctor might happen to suffer on the long march from his ancient enemy. In short, we were luxuriously furnished with food, sheep, goats, cheese, cloth, donkeys, and canoes, sufficient to convey us a long distance; we needed nothing more. The 27th of December has arrived; it is the day of our departure from Ujiji. I was probably about to give an eternal farewell to the port whose name will for ever be sacred in my memory. The canoes, great lumbering hollow trees, are laden with good things; the rowers are in their places; the flag of England is hoisted at the stern of the doctor's canoe; the flag of America waves and rustles joyously above mine, and I cannot look at them without feeling a certain pride that the 2 Anglo-Saxon nations are represented this day on this great inland sea, in the face of wild nature and barbarism. We are escorted to our boats by the great Arab merchants, by the admiring children of Unyamwezi, by the freemen of Zanzibar, by wondering Wahuga and Wajiji, by fierce Warundi, which are in this day quiet, even sorrowful, that the white men are going. Whither? they all ask. At 8 a.m. we start, freely distributing our farewells as the Arabs and quidnuncs wave their hands. On the part of 1 or 2 of them there was an attempt to say something sentimental and affecting, especially by the convicted sinner Mohammed bin Salih, but though outwardly I manifested no disapprobation of his words, or of the emphatic way in which he shook my hand, I was not sorry to see the last of him, after his treachery to Livingstone in 1869. I was earnestly requesting to convey to Unyanyembe "Mengi salams" to everybody, but had I done so, as he evidently desired me to do, I would not have been surprised at being regarded by all as hopelessly imbecile. We pushed off from the clayey bank at the foot of the market place, unencumbered with luggage, under the leadership of gigantic Asmani and Bombay, commenced their journey southward along the shores of the lake. We had arranged to meet them at the mouth of every river, to transport them across from bank to bank. The Doctor being in Sayd bin Majid's boat, which was a third or so shorter than the one under my command, took the lead, with the British flag, held aloft by a bamboo, streaming behind like a crimson meteor. My boat, manned by Wajiji sailors, whom we had engaged to take the canoes back from Tongwe Cape to Ujiji Bunder, came astern, and had a much taller flagstaff, on which was hoisted the ever beautiful Stars and Stripes. Its extreme height drew from the Doctor, whose patriotism and loyalty had been excited, the remark that he would cut down the tallest palmyra for his flagstaff, as it was not fitting that the British flag should be so much lower than that of the United States. Our soldiers were not a whit behind us in light-heartedness at the thought of going to Unyanyembe. They struck up the exhilarating song of the Zanzibar boatmen, with the ecstatic chorus, Kina Nderere Kitunga, rowing away like madmen until they were compelled to rest from sheer exhaustion, while the perspiration exuded from the pores of their bodies in streams. When refreshed, they bent back to their oars, raising the song of the Mrima, O Mama, Redemikai, which soon impelled them to an extravagant effort again. It was by this series of ferocious spurts, racing, shouting, singing, perspiring, laughing, groaning, and puffing, that our people vented their joyous feelings, as the thought filled their minds that we were homeward bound, and that by the route I had adopted between us and Unyanyembe there was not the least danger. We have given the Waha the slip, ha ha! The Wavinza will trouble us no more, ho ho! The Myanvu can get no more cloth from us, hi bye! And Kiala will see us no more, never more, he he! They shouted with wild bursts of laughter, seconded by tremendous and rapid strokes with their oars, which caused the stiff old canoes to quiver from stem to stern. Our party ashore seemed to partake of our excitement, and joined in the wild refrain of the mad African song. We watched them urging their steps forward to keep pace with us, as we rounded the capes and points, and rowed across the bays whose margins were sedge, and rush, and weed. The tiny and agile Kalulu, little Balali, and Majwara were seen racing the herds of goats, sheep, and donkeys which belonged to the caravan, and the animals even seemed to share the general joy. Nature also, proud wild Nature, with the lofty azure dome upheaved into infinity, with her breadth and depth of vivid greenness and enormous vastness on our left, with her immense sheet of bright glancing water, with her awful and intense serenity, she partook of and added to our joy. At about 10 a.m. we arrived at Kirindo's, an old chief, noted for his singular kindness to Dr. Livingstone, while he bore animosity to the Arabs. To the Arabs this was unaccountable; to the Doctor it was plain; he had but spoken kind and sincere words, while all the Arabs spoke to him as if he were not even a man, least of all a chief. Kirindo's place is at the mouth of Luichi, which is very wide; the river oozes out through a forest of Ishanomene pith tree. This was a rendezvous agreed upon between shore and lake parties, that the canoes might all cross to the other side, distant a mile and a half. The mouth of the Luichi forms the bay of Ukaranga, so named because on the other side, whither we were about to cross our party, was situated the village of Ukaranga, a few hundred yards from the lake. All the baggage was taken out of the largest canoe, and stowed snugly in the smaller one, and a few select oarsmen having taken seats, pushed off with the Doctor on board, who was to superintend pitching the encampment at Ukaranga, while I remained behind to bind the fractious and ill-natured donkeys, and stow them away in the bottom of the larger canoe, that no danger of upsetting may be incurred, and a consequent gobbling up by hungry crocodiles, which were all about us waiting their opportunity. The flock of goats were then embarked, and as many of our people as could be got in. About 30 still remained behind with myself, for whom my canoe was to return. We all arrived safe at Ukaranga, though we got dangerously near a herd of hippopotami. The crossing of the wide mouth, the Luiche being then in flood, was effected in about 4 hours. The next day, in the same order as on our departure from Ujiji, we pursued our way south,